Hi, everyone. Welcome to the virtual event space of Books and Books, a locally owned and independent bookstore in South Florida. Tonight, we are thrilled to bring you a truly royal book event. We have the great honor of hosting Emiko Jean, who has written Tokyo Ever After, a swoon-worthy, funny, and heartfelt young adult novel wherein teenage Izumi finds out she is Japanese royalty. And Emiko will be in conversation with Katharine McGee, the author of one of our favorite royals books of all time, American Royals and its sequel. So I'm going to read their bios quickly and then we will get started. When Emiko Jean isn't writing, she is reading. Before she became a writer, she was an entomologist, a candle maker, a florist, and most recently, a teacher. She currently lives in Washington with her husband and children, and she is the author of Empress of All Time. I'm sorry, Empress of All Seasons, and Will Never Be Apart. And in case you missed the news, it was also announced last week that Tokyo Ever After is a Reese's Book Club YA pick for this summer. Our moderator tonight is Katharine McGee. She is the New York Times bestselling author of American Royals and the Thousandth Floor trilogy. She studied English and French literature at Princeton and has an MBA from Stanford. Katharine lives with her husband and son in her hometown of Houston, Texas. And then before I hand this over to Emiko and Katharine, I do want to mention two things about your screen. The first is that big green button below me. That'll be there all night. That is where you'll find, it's a buy link for Tokyo Ever After, but you can also pick up Emiko's previous releases as well as American Royals or any of Katharine's books as well. We do have signed book plates on hand for Tokyo Ever After, and we ship worldwide, as well as offer store pickup locally. And then secondly, we are going to end the event with a Q&A. So if you guys have any questions, please drop them into the Ask a Question box in the bottom right-hand corner. Rather than drop them in the chat, just because they will get lost there. And I will see you guys in a little bit. Bye.
Welcome, everyone. This is such an exciting evening, and Emiko, I'm sure you're just thrilled to have your launch be tomorrow, but starting early tonight. How are you feeling? Congratulations on a really, really fun book.
I am feeling so excited. The book came out last week.
I'm so sorry I'm off by a week. I totally forgot it was tomorrow. Just kidding. Yeah.
I wouldn't have corrected you, but anyways, so what happened
time these days.
It was scheduled for tomorrow, and then we got the Reese Book Club, and they wanted it a week early. So it was, and that's what a lot of websites still say, that it comes out tomorrow. So, and I think a lot of websites aren't putting it out until tomorrow too. So,
okay. Yeah. Well, I absolutely love the book. So we have the same agent, and our shared agent gave me an early peek at the manuscript. It was last summer or fall, or what is time these days? But I was so delighted when I read it, because it was just the absolute perfect quarantine escapist fun read. And I'm very clearly a sucker for royalty stories and hidden princess stories, if we can call that a sub, or lost princess or secret princess, however you want to call that, the subgenre of a good royalty book. So I was predisposed to like it, but it is also so funny and so fresh and so much fun. And so I am just thrilled to be here chatting with you about it. So I was wondering if you could kind of kick us off, for those in the audience who aren't totally familiar with the premise, explain a little bit more about the book and where you got the idea for the story.
Sure. So it's about an American teen, an American-Japanese American teen named Izumi, who lives in Mount Shasta, which is a very small, mostly white Northern California town. And she lives there with her mom, her single mom. And she has a great relationship with her mom, but she's always longed to know her father and also to learn more about her culture. And so through a series of kind of fortunate events, Izumi discovers the real name of her father, and through her best friend, they find out that he is really the crown prince of Japan. And that just kind of kicks off a whirlwind of events for Izumi, where she travels to Japan to get to know her father and the country that she's always dreamed of. Yeah, and I guess the idea originally started, it's kind of being billed as The Princess Diaries meets Crazy Rich Asians, which is a great, I feel like, logline for it. But it didn't start that way. So I really was interested in exploring the Japanese American identity and thinking about myself in high school. And the literature that I read, I didn't read any books that featured Japanese American protagonists. So I deeply wanted to kind of place myself in a book that I loved. And so The Princess Diaries kind of came later after that. So once I had figured out that I wanted to explore Japanese American identity, it seemed right that we put it on this like really grand scale of the Imperial family, because they're such, that's who they are. They're the culture of Japan, basically. They're the heart of Japan.
So even as a royals enthusiast who has tried to learn more about all the monarchies in the world in recent years and have always known a lot about the Windsors, I've never really been able to crack the Japanese imperial family, probably because there aren't that many books written about them. The family it's small. And yet in your book, you made it so much fun. The cousins all have these very big, delightful personalities. Yoshi's obviously just my favorite. I want to go like eat all the omakase with him. So how did you come up with this fun family tree? How much research did you do about the Japanese imperial family? And maybe I should start by saying, how much of this is real? Like, or do they really behave in this kind of over the top way?
I don't think that they do. I took some creative license with that, which, it's fiction and you're allowed to do that. But it's true. There's not much known about the imperial family, especially their private lives. Their public lives are well known. So, their actions in World War II are really well known. And then what happened after that, where they were essentially fractured. So all of the nobility was stripped of their titles. And so it really did become this very small group of people. However, it still remains that there's still talk of the former nobility, and they still kind of maintain their social statuses in Japan. And they are invited to some of the events and all that kind of stuff. So even though they've been ousted out of the limelight, they're still very much present and part of the culture. But yeah, it's pretty fascinating, I think. I really struggled to lift that veil. A lot has been written about the emperors, but not a lot about the women, which is so fascinating. And so I really had to dig into mostly online resources and magazine articles to find out what they really did and who they really were and what their lives looked like and what their hopes and desires and dreams were and how their lives were affected by being a member of the imperial family.
There's a princess now who's engaged who has to give up her imperial status if she gets married, right?
Yeah. So if a princess marries a commoner, then she loses her status. She loses her princess title. And so she, in effect, becomes a commoner as well. She's given a small allowance by the Imperial Household Agency. I think it's around like, if you convert it into dollars, it's about $1 million. And then, and it's considered like a dowry of sorts. And then she is essentially cast from the line of succession. So she is removed from the genealogy and everything like that. And women can't inherit the imperial throne either. It only goes to males, which is so interesting. I think I read, and don't quote me on this, but the imperial family is one of two, I think, monarchies that only have male succession. I
know Monaco did. I don't know if Monaco even counts as it since it's a principality, but I know Monaco still has it as well.
Okay, so maybe that's the third.
So no, I know it's such a plot point in America in both of our books.
Yeah.
So speaking of illicit relationships with commoners, you have a very hot love interest who happens to be a bodyguard. And if you've read my books, you know I love a good bodyguard romance. How can you not love the man who stakes his life on the line for you every day? Tell me about how you came up with Akio and kind of how you built that relationship over the course of the book.
I really wanted it to be kind of an enemies to lovers trope. That's like, I'm a big fan of that. And so they start off kind of, I wouldn't say they hate each other, but they kind of, what's the term I'm looking for?
They're sparring. They're
they spar, yeah.
They're going up against each other at the beginning.
Yeah. And I'm a big fan of the bodyguard trope as well. And I wanted him to be someone, it was also strategic because I wanted her love interest to be someone that she interacted with, on a daily basis. So he needed to be really present. I wanted him to be loyal and representative of the Imperial family. Like, he's from a lineage of guards. I wanted him to kind of just have like the bearing of an ancient samurai. So he also brought some cultural elements to the relationship, and someone that she could trust. So that all fit in with the bodyguard.
It's so fun. I really loved it. Like I said, the cast of characters in this book is just incredible. Aside from Izumi being such a strong protagonist, all of the side characters have a lot of spunk, and I love the high school friends, the Asian girl gang. I love the scary shining cousins. I love the lady in waiting. Is it Mariko?
Mariko. Yeah.
Mariko. Which I always get the question of which character is your favorite. Did you have a favorite character that you brought in, or I know it's always hard to pick.
I love them all, and for different reasons. Izumi's kind of a girl after my own heart. Like, she very much resembles like teenage Emmy, and with her sense of humor and kind of just some of the things she says. A lot of my family have said, "I've heard you say that before," within the book. I loved drafting the scenes between her friends, especially Nora, who is just kind of like a supportive, really down-to-earth girl. And I really loved drafting Yoshi. He was so far and away from anything that I've ever personally experienced. Mm-hmm. And so getting to kind of live out this like lavish lifestyle through him was so much fun. And I just I took him, as far as he could go. I feel like I took him way out there.
He's the most Crazy Rich Asians-esque character, and yet he never loses his lovable nature. Mm-hmm. Like, he doesn't become Crazy Rich Asians in an obnoxious way. He becomes Crazy Rich Asians in a fun way, mm-hmm. And he just has the fabulous clothes and knows where to go and what to do. The book is so, as I said, it's so escapist and fun, but I feel like we're doing it a disservice if all we talk about is all the glitz and glamour and the royal stuff. Because as you mentioned in your intro, so much of what this book grapples with is the issue of identity and belonging. And, Izumi struggles at different points in the book. She says that she feels like she's not American enough, and then later that she's not Japanese enough, which, it was so wonderful to see her kind of grow as she grapples with those two different halves of her identity. Can you talk just a little bit more about how you used the royal angle to really get at this much more common issue?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it magnified it, right? So everything that happened to her happened on such a big stage, and so it allowed us to really get like an up close look at her identity struggle, which very much mirrors my own growing up. I didn't really reconcile my Japanese American identity until I wrote this book. I'd always felt bifurcated, and at the end, it doesn't wrap up in like a pretty bow, but in the end, Izumi becomes or feels that she's a whole and complete person, and that she doesn't need that validation from Japanese people or Americans, that she has her own agency within herself, and she feels empowered as a Japanese American.
Yeah, it was, like I said, even though the royal stuff is what we all came to the book for, some of my favorite scenes were Izumi with her high school friends. They're so fun. Did you have a group of friends like that in high school that was sort of your support system?
I did. So like Izumi, I grew up in a mostly white community, and there were very few Asians, and so we did form an Asian girl gang, and that's what we called ourselves. And so it's very much inspired and based on some real life experiences. I think there's one story that Izumi tells. I think it's just 1 or 2 lines, but she talks about how Nora convinced her to shave her eyebrows off and draw them on. And that was like my best friend in middle school convinced me to do that.
No, really?
It was horrifying. So there's little tidbits in there that I inserted from real life.
Those are always the stories, like the stories that sound the most outrageous are always the ones that you end up pulling from your own life.
Yeah.
People are like, what from the books is real? It's funny. People usually won't guess which are the details that are real.
I think she drew them, when she drew them back on, they were like a little above where your eyebrow goes. So I looked.
That would be hard to do. I wouldn't know where my eyebrows went if you were no longer there. Bad idea. So there's also so much beautiful exploration of the parent-child relationship in this book, both Izumi's relationship with her mom, and then of course her growing relationship with her father. Can you talk about, just kind of how you decided to use this book to explore family?
Yeah. So I really wanted to, there is one stereotype with Japanese Americans that parents are really strict and unforgiving and don't talk about their feelings a lot. And since Izumi's mother was 3rd generation Japanese, I really wanted to move away from that stereotype and show a really loving, caring relationship between Japanese American parents, which does exist. And aside from that, Izumi's mom, I just wanted her to be like a constant support. I think if her and her mom were butting heads, I don't think Izumi would have been able to kind of take this big risk and fly to Japan and meet her father if she didn't have kind of that soft place to land, like she didn't have that support from her mother. And with the dad, I wanted him to be receptive to having his daughter and getting to know her. And they do have some wobbles, but for the most part, they're both really committed to the relationship and to growing it and seeing where it goes.
So you've compared it to The Princess Diaries, but what we could also throw in the mix is The Parent Trap.
Yeah.
Definitely got some Parent Trap vibes in the second half. And I was so rooting for it. I was like, yes, I'm here for the parents getting back together. I'm like,
you're not the only one. And the other comp that I've heard too lately is What a Girl Wants.
I love that movie. That is, anything with Colin Firth is just on my list.
Yeah. I loved it too. I didn't think about it at all while I was drafting the book, but maybe subconsciously that like came through a little bit because I do remember loving that movie so much.
That movie is so fun. The only thing that's kind of different in your book is that book has the classic mean girl. Mm-hmm. And I feel like your mean girl comes in the form of all of the press and the paparazzi who are constantly tearing at Izumi and trying to take her down. I loved all of the articles. I felt like they were very Gossip Girl-esque in the sense that they broke up the narrative with, these check-ins with sort of the royal blog posts. So were you able to read, like, what's the version of, I don't know, of The Guardian or the Daily Mail would probably be a better analogy. Like, what does that exist for the Japanese royal family? Can you find those articles?
Yeah, there's definitely a tabloid culture in Japan. So there's reputable newspapers and there's, not so reputable newspapers that report on all sorts of stuff. For the most part, the reputable newspapers just report on like the comings and goings of the Imperial family. But the tabloids speculate all sorts of things, especially about the women. And it's really fascinating that it exists. It's so fascinating too, the way I was just reading a book. I think it was about Harry and Meghan, And it was talking about how the press works in kind of conjunction with the royal family, and like it's a symbiotic relationship. Like they keep the royal family or the imperial family like relevant. And so, you know, staying in the papers also is horrifying for them, but it also keeps them, you know, part of society and relevant, which I thought was so interesting. I hadn't thought of that before.
It keeps them relevant, but then they also sell papers. So like they both need each other.
Yeah. That's what I mean by symbiotic relationship.
Okay, so that was going to be my next question was how do you follow the British royal family, and are there echoes of any of the real life British royals in your book?
I have been following them since I wrote this book because it's kind of sparked an interest in all royalty for me and kind of tracking their lives. I'm trying to think if there's any instances. Most of the real life stuff was inspired by the Imperial family, what's been written about them in the tabloids. But we do see in book 2, no spoilers, a little bit of like the British royals, like some of the stuff that's happened with them come through in book 2.
Ooh,
yeah,
that is exciting.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about your progress on book 2. It was signed as a 2-book deal, so you always knew that so that you were able to end knowing that you were launching into a sequel.
Yeah.
That really helps. When does book 2 come out? It comes out next year, right?
Yeah, we don't have a date for it yet. But I would assume, you know, they do these things like a year apart. So I would assume spring of 2022.
So how far are you into the manuscript, dare I ask?
So I finished it the day before Tokyo Ever After published, and I turned it in.
You finished the whole thing? Like it's like all the drafts?
Not just no, like draft? My initial draft. So I'm waiting.
Oh, I was like, no way, you're so fast. You tell my editor how fast you were. That's so
it's being read right now.
Okay, and you don't have a title yet for book 2.
Oh, Tokyo Dreaming.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah, isn't it cute?
I mean, you have such, and the cover. Okay, let's talk. I'm holding the ARC, but I have the real one back there. The cover is so beautiful. I rarely get any input in my covers, and I'm lucky that my artist just comes at me with really good covers, and I can just approve them and say that they're fantastic, you know, and I love everything about them. But it's so hard sometimes, and I feel like when you have a beautiful cover like this, usually we're just really lucky and happened to have a fantastic cover designer. But did you get to have any say in this? Like it's so beautiful. I love the tiara. I love I don't even know what you call this, the like paper, the art. Right.
So you're right. Like, and this is I think a lot of readers don't know this, but authors seldom get any say in our book covers. I think I was looking at like my book contracts, and I think the term is meaningful consultation, when they like let you look and then give your opinion, and then they decide if they're going to take your opinion or not.
Mm-hmm.
But
usually by the time you see it, it's almost locked. So if you're like, I hate it, they go, that's too bad. We can change one tiny flower in the corner if you want.
And you're like, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
That's good. But for this one, we had several discussions beforehand, and we all agreed that we wanted to see a Japanese American girl on the cover, and we felt like representation was so important. And I emailed over kind of a list of all things Japanese, and we kind of circled around origami, and then someone said, what about paper cutouts? And that kind of just like, it just felt so right. And then we found this amazing paper cutout artist, and there was a lot of back and forth about if she should have her eyes open or closed, or if it should be full face or in profile, like all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But the paper cutout idea was there from go. And I think if you hold up the ARC again, the ARC was originally like this, like darker sky.
Blue, a little different.
Yeah. And they decided to lighten it a bit. which I don't know all the cover terms,
I
but
can really see how the color changed.
yeah, they call this Technicolor. I would have called this sky blue, but
this is really pretty. The final blue we landed on.
So it turned out really well, I think.
It turned out so well. No, it's and the gold. I mean, you guys can't see, but they're on the real book. The gold looks so spectacular. It's fun when the cover works out really well. It's such a hard job to be a cover designer. I don't envy them that at all.
Well, I mean, it's, they're an artist. So like, I always feel like it's like if someone keeps coming back to you with like the book that you've drafted, like we want to tweak this again and again, like think about how you feel and like apply that to the artist. It's like drawing something and you're like, can we tweak this one thing? So I get it. It's hard.
So in the sequel, I know you probably can't give any spoilers, but is there anything that you can say about what Izumi's up to?
So she's still in Tokyo, and her journey continues, kind of figuring out what it means to be a princess, if she even wants that, really. And we see Mom come to Tokyo, and Nora comes to Tokyo, and her stinky dog comes to Tokyo. So really, really fun. And there's more kissing.
Oh, I can't wait. There's always more kissing. I know. When people ask me what's in my next book, I usually go, there's more romance.
Yeah. Pretty much that on it. Yeah.
Yes, we kind of knew that one.
Yeah.
That is a safe bet. So I'm so glad that I'm lucky that I was able to visit Japan once in 2017, which feels like a long time ago now. My husband and I went and did Tokyo and Kyoto. Mm-hmm. So I've seen some of the places in your book, but of course reading it made me wish I could get back on a plane and go again for the sights and all of the beautiful flowers and everything, but also in a large part for the food. I was like, that was some of the best food I've ever eaten in my entire life. Have you visited Japan? What are your favorite places there? How much of that made its way into the book?
I have not actually visited Japan. We're planning a trip. I'm taking my dad, I think, in April of 2022, and I have plans to do all of the Imperial sites. Most of I did a lot of consulting work with friends in Japan and family in Japan who helped kind of contribute to getting all of the detail and scenes right. But yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of exploring and really seeing all the places that I've read about and looked at.
Oh, I'm glad you're going to get to go. It's high time. This was a year without travel, and now I feel like everyone's so eager to get to travel again. And by the way, if anyone has questions, please drop them into the question chat so that I can ask them in a minute. But last question before we get there is, what are some of your favorite books that you're reading lately? Or you can just say favorite Royals books in general. Or non-royal, but we can do one of each category.
Well, I loved American Royals, of course.
Okay.
I finished that in like 48 hours, which is a feat since I have 3.5 twin toddlers. So that's diminished my reading.
Oh my gosh, I did not know twins.
Yeah.
Oh, you're amazing. How did you have time to write this book?
I'm very tired.
Tell me your secrets.
I know, because you have we're getting off topic here, but
but this actually writing process is we didn't even talk about whether you're a plotter or a pantser. I should have opened with that. Everyone always wants to know that. I assume you write from an outline because this was tightly plotted. I feel like you couldn't have winged it on this.
Yes, to outlines. My first book, I didn't outline, and I learned like the hard way. If you don't outline, it means you do probably twice as many revisions, I feel like. So since then, I've been a pretty diehard outliner, and now I do like 6 revisions instead of a dozen.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
It's so funny how much that we write that gets thrown in the trash can. Every book. I'm like, I can cut her this time. And then it's like, no, still cutting chapter. And I'm like, this is weeks of my life that I'm cutting.
It's no big deal. I looked at an original draft of Tokyo Ever After this morning because I was trying to find some cut content, which there always is that. and the original draft was 95,000 words. And so it came in, I think my editor, Sarah, emailed me, and she was like so nice. And she was like, I think this needs to be about 75,000 words. So we had to cut so much from it.
Yeah. I was going to say, this doesn't feel like 100,000 word book. You got some, they took the hatchet to you, but those are it's always good to have those deleted scenes. And like you were saying, I bet you can use some of them in the sequel. I still have a scene that's been chasing me forever that I'm like, eventually, it's just a scene of, it was the royal family dancing basically at a club, and it got cut from book 1. I tried to put it in book 2. It got cut from book 2. And now I'm like, if there's ever a book 3, I'm going to sneak it in there somewhere. I don't even know. It's just, it's really fun, but I never could find the right way to use it. But you never know with the recycled scenes. Sometimes they come back.
Yeah. I'm find ways to use them, because I do. It's blood, sweat, and tears in there. So I'm gonna find it.
With like a cool royal setting, you really want to make sure it gets used if you have something fun like that. So do you wake up early and write? How do you manage it with 2 small kids?
So I have childcare, which is like key.
Mm-hmm.
So I have great childcare. So I wake up like at 6:30 in the morning, and I do all my like showering and all that, because you don't shower if you don't shower before the kids wake up, it's not going to happen. At least not for me. It feels like most of the time. And then they wake up about 7. Their childcare starts at like 8, and then it goes till 4. So I have like strict office hours from 8 to 4. And it's writing time. It's like do or die. I feel I use my time more wisely now than I did pre-kids. Like every hour counts.
As the hours count. It's so much harder when you have to go run an errand or something. I feel very frustrated because I'm like, this is my work time. I need to be working right now.
Yeah. And do you do stuff like I always find myself drifting too and doing things non-writerly related, like things for the kids and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Like earlier, I was shopping for like swim socks and stuff for them online for vacation.
It has to get done at some point. Yeah. Other people would do it at their desk, but yes, it is. It's really hard, and I agree. I also have childcare, and I could not do it any other way. The second that our babysitter leaves, I'm done. There's no more work getting done for the day.
It's impossible. It's impossible.
Okay, well, let's see some of the questions that people. Oh, someone asked about the covers. We already covered that. Okay, Christina asked, one of the things that made me love Izumi from the start is her love of romance novels. Can you tell us what inspired you to include that detail?
Okay, so that's another like personal thing. So I grew up, my mom loved like Harlequin and Avon romance novels, like, the ones.
Yes, I know
those. And she was always like, don't read these. And then, of course, I was like, well, I'm going to read them. And so it's totally inspired by me in high school, and I think I read them in middle school too, which is kind of terrifying. But I would squirrel them away and read them at night and everything. I learned so much.
I know. That's, it's training in writing romance. And both of our romances are very clean, but you still need the romantic build and like the emotional tension. And of course the forbidden love. We talked about hate, enemies to lovers, hate to love as kind of what your romance is playing into, but it's also forbidden love, which is, that's kind.
Those historical romance novels, I couldn't get enough of them when I was younger.
So Kate asked, the comparisons to the Princess Diaries are inevitable, but one obvious difference is that this is a real royal family. What made you choose an existing monarchy rather than making up a fictional one? Yeah,
that's a good question. I wanted the story to feel as authentic as possible. And again, writing about Japanese American identity, I felt it was just important. It had to be the Imperial family of Japan. There really wasn't any other choice. I don't even think I ever thought of that as an option, was just making up a fictional royal family.
Your other book is fantasy, right?
Yes.
Okay, so how was it different writing writing this book, which still has, because so much of royalty can kind of feel almost like a fantasy novel because of all the pomp and the circumstance. How was that different from writing actual fantasy?
It was a bit easier writing contemporary. I did a lot of, so it was a Japanese inspired fantasy. So on Japanese folklore and myths. So I did a lot of research into historical Japan, which actually was a great foundation for this book. But it was much easier with contemporary Japan finding resources and research, and also just kind of pop culture, because I'm living in it. So
exactly, it's always easier writing a contemporary.
Yeah.
So Ryan asked, which I think is a very fun question, do you have any tips on writing about a royal family, and what aspects do you think create a vibe of royalty? Is it measured by history and pomp, or by actions in the present?
Both, I would think. Yeah, I mean, you have to have that historical perspective in order to create that foundation, because they really are, they're a collective, right? So even though there's individuals within the royal family, you have to look at them as like a piece of history and as like one person essentially, throughout time. And that's really what makes them who they are and what drives their place in society.
Right. No, I completely agree. So much of what makes a book feel royal is all of that, what we were just saying, the glittery pomp and circumstance, but you have to engage with the history too. And then of course with how that history plays out in the modern world. I do think it's funny. I look back on American Royals book 1 and some of the scenes that ended up being my favorites were really my editor pushing me. Every single draft, I would turn it in and she would give all her notes about the characters and things. And then she would say, I just wish there was more royal in it. Yeah. And I'm like, it's literally a book about princesses. What more do you want? She's like, I just wish it was more royal. Can you give me more royal? And so it wasn't until the last draft that the opening scene of American Royals all takes place around what I call the investiture ceremony. So basically the new candidates for knighthood getting knighted. That was just a gala up until the end. And then finally when she said, I wish there was more royal, I was like, there's nothing more royal than being knighted. I was like, you're just fine. You're going to get knights. You're going to get Princess of America is going to literally have a sword and be knighting people. And she was like, this is great. And I was like, yeah, but I needed that. I needed somebody constantly prodding me to go, where can I put more royal things in? And I'm just shoehorning them in wherever I can. I'm like, should they have this conversation in their bedroom? They could, but they could also have it in the Imperial state coach with horses with golden saddles, because that's very royal. So it is funny how those things end up.
The devil's in the details. I feel like I was going to say that that's why I was nodding so vigorously, because I was like, yeah, we had in Tokyo Ever After, I make a remark Izumi sits down on this settee that was gifted from, a duke or something like that. And it really it does create that whole feeling of luxury and history and provenance.
Oh, and the part where she's learning origami, that was when I started to really feel like, okay, it's royalty, but it has this very, very distinct, it's grounded in Japanese culture. Can you share what's the status on TV film for Tokyo Ever After?
It has been optioned, but I was saying this the other day, I feel like writers always have secrets. We're always sitting on something, like a secret project or something, and then we kind of tease about it and they're like, we can't tell you, and you'll find out in a year. So that's pretty much where I'm at right now.
That's really exciting though. Congratulations. I would love to see it as TV or film. I think
it would be so fun, and having another, having an all Japanese American cast would be so great.
I was going to say it, now that Crazy Rich Asians has proven how successful that kind of film can be and how much fun it can be, I'm hoping that there will be more like that. Okay, there are a couple more questions. Oh, I love this one. Christina asked, what was your favorite scene to write? Like, was there any scene that was just particularly fun?
I loved writing the first scene where she lands in Japan and she meets Akio, her bodyguard, and they kind of go back. She uses the bathroom. I love writing that. Like, I don't know if you're this way, but sometimes when I'm drafting, I'll just be smiling at the computer, like I'm so excited and happy to be writing a scene, like I'm kind of grinning. Mm-hmm. And I just remember smiling while writing that whole scene, and them going back and forth. And he's so like rigid and uptight, and she's wearing her leggings, and it just really, showed the contrast between the two.
Oh, absolutely. No, I totally agree with you. There are scenes that they never change from the first draft to the final. And it's always the ones where, as you're writing it, you're thinking, this is good. I'm writing something good here, laughing at my own jokes. I'm so great. But that's a rare feeling. That's kind of the feeling that we're always chasing, and it comes along so rarely. And I wish it came along more. Far more often for me, it's me writing, being like, there are parts of this that feel right, but it also feels kind of clunky, and I feel like I'm going to get about half of this cut. Yeah. I just need to get it on paper and keep going so that then I can like look at it as a whole and finally make some edits. I
know my mantra lately has been like, I'll just come back to that. You write it and then I'll come back to it. Yeah.
So you just turned in the first draft for book 2. So you've got book 2 going on for a while. Mm-hmm. Do you have anything like teed up for after that? Or are you kind of just going to let that inspiration strike when it does?
I think, I'm always thinking of characters and novels. I just finished a women's fiction novel that I'm going to revisit, I think, this summer.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
When did you have time for this? That's amazing.
I drafted it in the spring of last year.
Okay.
Does that sound right? Again, time is like nebulous and has no meaning. It all happened within the pandemic.
Last year was it was like 5 years at once, and it was also 1 month. Like, I don't know how it happened.
Same.
It's really hard to pinpoint when anything that happened in 2019 or 2020. I'm like, it passed, but I don't know when.
Yeah. So I drafted the novel.
How did it feel writing women's fiction after YA?
I'm
like dipping my toes into women's fiction for the first time. Yeah, it's not racy yet. I keep wanting it to get racy, and then I just write YA romance scenes, and I'm like, I don't know how to up the ante there.
Yeah, I did. So I included one. There's 2 racy scenes in the book, and I hadn't written anything like that before, and I was like bright red.
Right.
I came out of the office, and my husband was like, "Why are you so red right now?" And I was like, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." But I loved it. I think, as writers, we're always evolving and looking for that new challenge. And I thought I'd give it a try, and I like it. How are you liking it?
Oh yes, it definitely feels easier in a lot of ways because the characters are grappling with questions that I'm actually grappling with. They're all in their late 20s and early 30s, and either married or in serious relationships. And I think that's kind of the different thing about YA that has, for better or worse, I have taken sort of a different approach to YA than I think, and I think your books do too. They take a little bit. They don't follow down the fairways that everyone kind of wants us to. Like, I think that a lot of readers turn to YA and they expect it to be extremely predictable. Mm-hmm. And I like when a book has a twist or two, and and things kind of shock you in the end. And of course, and Tokyo Ever After has so much humor and spirit and spunk that it just there's so much. The voice is so strong. But yeah, I think that I sometimes disappoint my readers because I think they expect things to be very by the book and predictable, and I keep throwing plot wrenches in the midst. And I'm like, oh, these are 17-year-olds, so they definitely shouldn't end up with like the first person that they've ever had a crush on ever. They should have the first love is not your true love. So I approach it with perhaps too much of an adult perspective at times. So it is kind of nice to write adult relationships that, I'm not writing about young love. I'm writing about more mature love.
Yeah. Yeah. I can totally see that.
Yeah. Well, Emmy, it was so fun chatting with you tonight. I love getting to hear all these things and talk royals and princesses and romance with you. And I'm so in love with your book and so excited that I got to participate. So thank you for thinking of me for this.
Thank you so much. And you are actually the first one to read this outside of editors and agents and blurb it. So I'll forever hold that in my heart. Thank you very much.
It truly is my pleasure. You wrote such a fun book.
Thank you.
Thank you both for joining us. This was a really, really fun event. It was really, I think I called it our most royal event ever. It really was. I love hearing you guys talk about it. I love both of your books, and we're really honored that you spent some time with us tonight. So thank you from us, and thank you to everyone who tuned in. Thank you guys so much. We had a great time. So have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good night. Bye.